For years, his mind was never silent. Can you relate to that? From the moment he woke up, the thoughts would start rushing in. They'd follow him all day long, a constant, buzzing companion. And at night, when he just wanted to rest, they'd stay with him, replaying the day, worrying about tomorrow. Even when everything was perfectly fine, his mind was busy. It was a factory of worry, a library of old memories, and a movie theater for problems that hadn't even happened yet. From the outside, his life looked completely normal. He had a job, he talked to people, he smiled. He went through the motions of a regular day. But inside, his mind was exhausted. It felt like he was running a marathon that never ended. He tried so many things to find some quiet. He tried staying incredibly busy, filling every single second with a task, hoping to crowd out the noise. He tried distraction movies, music, endless scrolling, anything to keep his mind occupied. He listened to advice from friends, family, and experts. He tried to think positive, to force the negative thoughts out, but nothing worked. In fact, it often felt worse. The more he tried to control his thoughts, to wrestle them into submission, the louder and more rebellious they became. It was like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more forcefully it bursts back to the surface. One evening, after another long and mentally draining day, he sat alone, in the quiet of his room. He felt this immense weight on his chest. It wasn't exactly sadness. It wasn't anger. It was just noise. A relentless, chattering, internal monologue that would not stop. His own mind was a place he couldn't escape. But that very night, something shifted. As he sat there, observing the chaos in his head, he noticed a pattern. It was something small, something he'd never paid attention to before. Every single time a thought appeared, he didn't just notice it. He grabbed onto it. He followed it down a rabbit hole. He would argue with it, analyze it, and then add more thoughts on top of it. A single, simple thought, like, "Did I sound stupid in that meeting?" would instantly become 10 thoughts, then 100, until it was a full-blown internal storm of self-doubt and anxiety. And that was the moment of realization, the light bulb that flickered on in the noisy room of his mind. The problem wasn't the thoughts themselves. Thoughts come and go for everyone. The problem was his habit of chasing them. He was the one giving them power, feeding them energy, and turning a single spark into a wildfire. So he decided to change one small thing, just one single habit. He wasn't going to try to empty his mind or stop thinking altogether. He was simply going to stop chasing the thoughts. From that day forward, whenever a thought popped into his head, he wouldn't follow it. He would just notice it, give it a simple label, and let it pass by like a cloud in the sky. If a worry about the future appeared, he would quietly say to himself, "Worry." If a painful memory from the past came up, he'd just acknowledge it. Memory. If a wave of fear washed over him, he'd name it. Fear, and then, without any judgment or struggle, he would gently bring his attention back to whatever he was doing, breathing, walking, washing the dishes. At first, this felt incredibly strange. It felt unnatural, uncomfortable, almost wrong. His mind, so used to being the center of attention, tried to fight back. The thoughts became louder, more dramatic, more urgent. It was like his mind was screaming, "Hey, pay attention to me. This is important." But he stayed with his new habit. He didn't fight his mind. He didn't argue back. He simply stopped feeding the drama. He stopped participating in the chase. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, something began to change. The gaps between his thoughts started to grow longer. The constant background noise softened to a gentle hum. Moments of genuine quiet started to appear in his day. It wasn't an all-day silence, not a permanent state of bliss, but it was enough. It was enough to take a deep breath. It was enough to feel a sense of calm. It was enough to actually feel present in his own life. People around him started to notice the change. He seemed more relaxed. His shoulders weren't so tense. He spoke a little slower, more deliberately. He started to listen more attentively in conversations, instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. One day, a colleague asked him, "Wow, you seem so calm lately. What's your secret?" He just smiled and gave a simple answer. "I stopped chasing my thoughts." That was all it was. It wasn't a magic pill or a complicated technique. Problems still came up. Life certainly didn't become perfect overnight. But his entire relationship with his own mind had transformed. Before, every little problem would take up residence in his head for hours, sometimes days, paying no rent. Now, problems came, he acknowledged them, and he let them go. Before, he would replay conversations over and over again, analyzing every word. Now, he just let them be. He learned one of the most important lessons of his life. Peace isn't the absence of problems, or the absence of thoughts. Peace is the absence of resistance. When you stop fighting your own mind, your thoughts lose their power over you. When you stop feeding them with your attention and energy, they naturally start to fade away. The habit was so small, almost trivial. But the effect on his life was enormous. He no longer felt the need to empty his mind, which was an impossible task anyway. He simply stopped filling it with unnecessary drama. His sleep improved. He'd lie down at night, and while thoughts might still appear, they were like distant stars, instead of glaring headlights. He'd wake up in the morning feeling lighter, not already burdened by the day ahead. When stress did appear, and of course it still did, he could notice it without becoming it. When fear appeared, he could allow it to be there without letting it paralyze him. And then, he could always come back to the present moment. He learned that the mind creates the most noise when it feels unobserved, when it's running wild. When you watch it with a calm, non-judgmental awareness, it naturally begins to settle. Think of it like a jar of muddy water. If you shake it and try to force the mud to settle, you just make it murkier. But if you just set it down and leave it alone, the dirt will naturally, peacefully, settle to the bottom, leaving the water clear. Years later, someone came to him for advice, someone who was struggling with the same mental noise he once had. They asked, "How do I find peace? My mind never stops." He answered them softly, sharing the simple wisdom he had discovered. Don't chase every thought. That was his secret. It wasn't about escaping life or avoiding his responsibilities. It was simply about choosing not to follow every single distraction his mind threw at him. So, remember this. You don't need to control your mind. You don't need to silence your thoughts. You only need to stop chasing them. Try it. The next time a thought appears, just notice it. Label it. Thinking, worrying, and then let it go. Sometimes, peace doesn't come from doing more. It comes from letting go. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content on finding peace in our busy world. See you next time.